Could you give us some examples of what you heard from early customers in one of your enterprises and that might have influenced the direction of the company itself, i.e. talking to customers and how they might have influenced what actually happened?
Right. So I think, when you go talk to the customers, particularly if you're working on ideas that are very technical and far-reaching, you will never get there by talking to customers and taking a big survey and accumulating all the inputs. You just won't get there. So you do have to take something that the customer doesn't know. And typically, particularly in technical areas, it's something that the new technology has made possible that wasn't possible before. So when we did Cascade Communications, people used to build these big networks, but in a very messy way, because the networks are all built for phones. For example, the way the phone network works is that it takes 20 phones together, 24 phones, and puts it into a little traffic, and then they get aggregated, and then there's a T1. There's a whole hierarchy of how you build all these networks together and put them on the fiber. The way the data networks were built was that they would give one phone to be used like a computer. So a computer would pretend like it's a phone and make the noise, and then they would communicate that throughout the whole system. But when they came to the office, they would open up that whole fiber optic. So one fiber optic would open up into like maybe 1,000 different ports. And then so you'd have this huge equipment, right? And the big secret that I found was that if that's the problem they want to solve, why can't we just take the fiber directly into the electronics? So it's just one connection. And internally, we opened up everything and did all the processing that we needed to do, put it back on another fiber and get it out. So this whole big room full of mess got all compressed into one little fiber. And so I couldn't have gotten to that solution if I wasn't speaking to enough customers and visiting them and really saying, hey, tell me what your problem is and everything else. So I think it's more observing the customers as opposed to customers telling you what to do. It's very rare that a customer actually tells you what the solution needs to be, because if he can actually tell you a solution, the existing vendor would actually probably do it, and he's in a better position to do it.
And how did you go about actually just talking to the customers? I mean, a lot of entrepreneurs, especially technical ones, are pretty nervous about even talking to a customer. How did that process play out?
Right. So number one, the entrepreneurs should separate establishing a product in the market to actually building a sales channel, everything else. If the entrepreneur himself cannot sell a product, nobody else in the world can sell the product, right? So the entrepreneur has to realize that he actually has to sell the product. When you hire the VP of sales, the VP of sales can get everything organized, and if you sell to 3 customers, maybe he can sell it to another 300 customers and so on. But a VP of sales will never be able to close the first deal. It's the passion, it's the deep understanding, it's the insight of the entrepreneur. So as an entrepreneur, I had to learn how to just pick up the phone and cold call. I'm a big believer in cold calling. I don't like to go to people because of big connections. And I can tell you anecdotes as to how people, it doesn't work out. I see a lot of customers, and then they say, well, I got this big board, and they know the CEO of Ford Motor Company, and I can get there. So they will actually call the CEO. And the CEO, once he hears this other name, he'll be very nice, and he'll say, great, why don't we have lunch? I'll see you on December 18th. So the entrepreneur gets all excited, and he waits till 18th. He goes there. He has a very nice lunch. And then the CEO, of course, he's just being nice. He'll listen to the whole thing and say, you know what, you need to speak to my CTO. And then he'll call CTO. CTO will now take the call because the CEO told him. And then it'll be like February 27th. So it'll go on and on and on, and you'll never find it. Whereas when you have something to offer and you make a cold call, and the guy on the other side says, oh, really, you have it? You know he is looking for it, right? So cold calling is the only way to test things out and to see if people are genuinely interested in something. So cold calling is a very, very big part of actually getting a company going.
And finally, if there's one thing you'd recommend new entrepreneurs make sure to ask their customers. What might that be?
Well, when entrepreneurs talk to customers, I think, at some point you actually have to ask for the purchase order. You actually have to look for the commitment, right? But it's a stages. When you're raising money, you're not really asking for purchase order. All you're asking for a customer is to say, if I did this, would you buy it, right? So you're just looking for testimonials. Once you get the testimonials, you want to push them a little bit harder. But you always have to be pushing a customer a little bit harder. If you have a great idea, then what happens is that if the customer comes back and says, hey, you fully bake it, when everything is working, it's just perfect, then come back and sell me, then you really don't have a value. When people are willing to buy a half-baked product from you, half-baked bread from you, and there's a big lineup, you really know you have something. So your value proposition has to be so strong that customer is willing to engage and he's willing to say, yeah, I want to put something into it. And so asking for that involvement and asking the customer to actually put something into that process, I think is very important. And entrepreneurs are always very scared that what if he says it's not a great idea? And you have to have enough guts to actually face that. Because if it's not a good idea, you'd rather be doing something else rather than chasing it for another whole year and then finding that it's not a good idea.